The problem is the system of capitalism. And importantly for me, the system of capitalism that we're teaching in business schools. That is the problem, and we need to start to rethink that. And quite frankly, if we continue to produce students that care only about making money for themselves and defect on the interests of society, we're doomed. I see more and more students coming to business school and demanding change. I think it's the business schools that are kind of slow to adapt. The bottom line is we have a system that is not serving the needs of the 21st century, and it is time to amend it. We need to teach people how to run successful businesses, absolutely. But we also need to teach them to run businesses that serve a broader purpose, and business schools need to play a role in that and help the students learn how to be stewards of the market to try and amend it and fix it. My name is Andrew Hoffman. I go by Andy Hoffman, and I'm the Wholesome U.S. Professor of Sustainable Enterprise at the University of Michigan. I've been a professor focusing on sustainability issues for over 30 years. For most of my career, I've focused on trying to fit sustainability issues, climate change, species extinction, environmental pollution into the market as it exists. Frame it as a market shift. You can address climate change because your consumers care about it, because regulations care about it, insurance companies, investors care about it. And that's great. It gets buy-in. You don't even need to accept that climate change is real to see that it's a business issue. In more recent years, I've come to realize that that is not going to solve the problem. It will slow down the velocity at which we're running into a systems breakdown, a brick wall, but it won't reverse course. The problem is deeper. The problem is the system of capitalism. And importantly for me, the system of capitalism that we're teaching in business schools. That is the problem, and we need to start to rethink that. Students are demanding more, and that gives me hope because students are the reason we exist. And as they continue to create pressure, business schools will be forced to respond. I think, for example, that climate change, income inequality, even artificial intelligence are forcing business schools and education writ large to rethink what they do, why they do it, and towards what end. And so that's the challenge before us right now, and it's time for business schools to respond. Every student that goes to business school today knows one variant of capitalism, that's shareholder capitalism. That's been with us since the 1970s, but it is not working anymore. We have some systemic problems in the market. Climate change, environmental problems are systemic breakdowns caused by capitalism, and capitalism doesn't seem to be able to solve it. Similarly, we have income inequality at levels we have not seen since the Great Depression, since the Gilded Age. And these are built into the system as it's structured, and so we need to rethink the system. And there are some economic metrics that show that shareholder capitalism is faltering. I mean, the whole idea behind shareholder capitalism was to align the incentives of the CEO with those of the corporation, the interests of the corporation. And yet, over the past 20 years, CEO pay has gone up 1,400%, 8 times more than corporate profits. Total factor productivity has gone down compared to the era of capitalism that preceded shareholder capitalism. I could go on. The bottom line is we have a system that is not serving the needs of the 21st century, and it is time to amend it. It is time to think it through. It's not an argument to dismantle capitalism. It's not an indictment of capitalism. It's not an argument for socialism. It's just an argument that the system is not working properly, and we need to make some adjustments, and business schools need to play a role in that and help the students learn how to be stewards of the market to try and amend it and fix it. The existing curriculum in business schools teaches primarily the how of business, but focuses very little on the why. Why are students going into business? Why are they choosing this career path? And quite frankly, if we continue to produce students that care only about making money for themselves and defect on the interests of society, we're doomed. I do see hope. I do see a growing population of students that are coming into business with a desire to improve the world around them. Business is a powerful, powerful institution. The market is the most powerful institution on earth. Business, most powerful entity within it. Quite frankly, if business isn't addressing these issues, they won't be solved. And so I see more and more students coming to business school and demanding change. I think it's the business schools that are kind of slow to adapt. And so how do we encourage those students to become stewards of the market, to learn more about the role of government in the market, to start to think about what their purpose is, what their calling is? Teaching students in business in the same spirit we teach doctors to serve society. We need to teach people how to run successful businesses, absolutely. But we also need to teach them to run businesses that serve a broader purpose to help us live lives we want to live, to have a society we want to have, one that serves everybody and not just the elite few, which is presently what we have. The changes that I'm calling for in business school in my work are large, and I know that it's a big lift. If I could blow up the curriculum and start from scratch, I would. I know that's not possible. So we have to think about how to transform it. Break down the siloed approach of the various disciplines, marketing, finance, accounting, strategy, and start to think systemically about the business as a whole, not just what's inside it, but how it connects to the world outside. The power of business is enormous. We need to teach students how to manage that power wisely in order to serve society, protect the environment. So we need to start to rethink what's the role of government in the market? What's the role of business in policymaking? What is the true purpose of the firm? This question has been engaged by numerous groups, the World Economic Forum, the Business Roundtable. Business schools need to step in. We need to stop teaching some things we teach, that efficiency is always good, that people are inherently selfish, that are self-interested. Start to re-examine some of the core values that we teach in business schools. We need to start to rethink how we choose the students and socialize them when they come in, how we choose faculty, train them, reward them. The reward system is so important. We need to start to think about the physical infrastructure. Who are our donors? Who are the recruiters we bring in? Again, I'm bringing a kitchen sink of questions to the business school, and I know that all of them can't be addressed, but every business school has its own path. They can pick the ones that work for them, and hopefully, over time, the entire set of institutions can change. The obstacles to doing this are enormous. I would put my finger on three things that I think are standing in the way. One is the rankings. The rankings have a very pernicious effect to stifle innovation because everyone's chasing the same set of metrics when there should be allowed to have more deviation, more variety, more heterogeneity. We now have a monoculture of business schools, and it's in large part caused by the rankings. Number two is the reward system. Faculty are rewarded for research. Teaching is important, but at the end of the day, it comes down to your research that decides how you're rewarded at the end of the year. And that drives faculty in a certain direction that minimizes the value of teaching. And then the third challenge, I think, is that this is an institutional challenge. The entire institution of business education has to change, from schools to journals to donors to recruiting to you name it. The whole system has to change. One school could try and change the reward system and say we're going to follow a different metric. Junior faculty would have been unwise to follow it because unless a guaranteed tenure, they're not going to have a packet that's saleable in the market. Senior faculty, likewise, are going to be hesitant to put the effort into a fundamental restructuring of the curriculum because A, it takes a long time, a lot of work, and it's not sure to work. I've talked to numerous deans who have championed major changes, and then when their tenure is over, they watch it all revert back to the standard model, driven by the reward system, driven by the rankings. How long is this going to take? I don't know. The important thing is that we start and recognize that change will be accelerated by sudden threats that cause a massive shift. What are those threats? We can start to see them. AI is certainly a threat that's changing how we think about teaching. Certainly the global economy, especially as governments continue to use economic sanctions. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was a business concern. Many businesses pulled out of Russia. The United States uses sanctions. The sanctions affect businesses. So the world is changing rapidly, and business schools are having to deal with those changes and respond. If we can transform business education to start to think about purpose, calling, vocation, think about a role of government in the market, start to rethink the purpose of the firm, then we can start to examine some leverage points for moving away from the fairly short-term model we have right now. For example, CEO compensation is driven in large part by share price, and that encourages CEOs to juice the share price by, for example, share buybacks. And if you're following the implosion at Boeing, a big part of that is between 2014 and 2018, they diverted 92% of their operating budget to share buybacks, moving away from quality, moving away from building excellent airplanes and just trying to juice the share price. So how can we think about thinking in the long term? Change CEO compensation, tax policies that go beyond 1, 2, or even 5 years, go to 10 years, 20 years. Start to get students to understand that there is a future generation out there that will live with the decisions we make today. And how do we work those considerations into our present-day economic calculations? These are all ways we can start to bring the future into the present. Business schools around the world are starting to focus on climate change. They're doing this primarily by dropping an elective into the rest of the curriculum. The curriculum stands unchanged. And the curriculum really focuses on win-win scenarios, that you merely need to come up with another product, another service, you can make money and solve the climate change issue, and we have to change very little about how we live. It's not going to be that simple. There are some very difficult decisions that have to be made, and we need to teach students the nature of those questions, the decisions, and how to solve them. For example, how do you carefully and justly sunset the fossil fuel industry, at least as we know it right now? The idea that we're just going to come up with a new source of energy and the fossil fuel industry is just going to pass away, that A, if it's possible, B, it certainly won't happen in the time necessary for it to happen. People are going to have to endure a little bit of pain, a little difficulty in that transition, whether it's the investors in the fossil fuel sector and people employed by them, or even people on the everyday level. If you want to buy an electric car, you're going to have to outlay the money. You're going to have to put in a charger. This will be some upfront cost. We have to pay upfront costs now, and the benefits come later. The costs now are very clear. The benefits later are less clear. This is not a simple calculation. This is not a simple decision. I think we need to provide students with the tools necessary to properly address this issue. As business schools are seeking to address climate change, they're treating it as an environmental issue, and it's not. It's a systems breakdown. If you want to fix a systems breakdown, you have to fix the system that caused it. The system that caused it is capitalism. We need to amend capitalism to stop its damaging effects on the natural environment. What I'm advocating here is not an indictment of capitalism. Capitalism is an amazing institution that has done wonderful things for the world, but it is broken and it needs amending. And the important point is, how do we take what we have right now to get where we need to go? Nowhere in human history have we a chance to just wipe the slate clean and come up with a new set of institutions. We have to start with what we have and bring it to where we need to go. That's the challenge before us. We need to teach students this is capitalism. It is not like a law of gravity. It is a set of human-made institutions in service of humans. Adam Smith had a vision for what capitalism would be, and it has evolved since then. What has it become today? What are the multiple variants that are around the world? Where are the places where it's going wrong? What are the leverage points for fixing it? These are the kind of tools we need to provide students. This is one of the few times you'll find me quoting Tucker Carlson. Capitalism is a tool, like a staple gun or a toaster. If it's broken, fix it or get a new one. We need to fix capitalism. That's the challenge before us. How do we begin to teach leaders instead of those who only care about profits? The idea of instilling a sense of purpose is, to my mind, increasingly important for business schools. We can't just teach mechanics of business. We need to teach students to follow their own sense of what kind of impact they want to have on the world. What kind of a business leader do they want to be? What kind of businesses do they want to work for and in and run? We need to start to think about calling and vocation in business. That, to my mind, will go a long way towards creating the kind of leaders we need for the 21st century. The challenge to get students to think more systemically is a challenge for higher education writ large. But business schools can go a long way. How do we make the boundaries with the business school much more permeable so we can bring in more of the natural sciences so students can understand the impact of business decisions on the natural world? How do we bring in public policy to connect businesses and business students with the world of government? How do we connect more with engineering? My dream is that we could create business students that know how to put together a structure a financing deal to create a wind array or a solar array. They'll understand the tax implications that make that possible and tax policies that could make it more possible in the future. They'll understand technology. They'll understand the technological hurdles that we need to go through. They'll understand the social dynamics. Why are people opposed to windmills? All these things can create a much more well-rounded business leader to deal with the challenges, the complex challenges we face in the world in the 21st century. Am I optimistic? It's a question I'm asked often. And I like to think about it as the difference between optimism and hope. Optimism, I look at the odds and say they're in my favor, I'll do something. Hope says I don't care what the odds are, I'm going to do something. And I'm hopeful because we don't know what the future brings. And I see a growing number of students that want to focus on these issues, and that gives me hope. I have not seen such attention on sustainability among students, among businesses. I've never seen so many jobs with the word sustainability in them. Companies are scrambling to try and figure this out. And young people are coming to them saying, we want to help you figure it out. Business schools need to give them the tools to do it. I see isolated innovations. I see individual courses that give me hope. Here at the Harvard Business School, Reimagining Capitalism is a course that was started by Rebecca Henderson that shows a way of going. At Yale, there's a course on inequality. There are isolated pockets of change. The fact that deans now are speaking up on sustainability gives me hope. There are some outliers out there of schools that are trying to do this. Everyone's doing small pieces in their own way, but we got to really change the entire set of institutions. When I saw the advertisement for this fellowship, I saw the Institute for the Study of Business and Global Society. And that speaks to where my thinking has evolved. The challenge is not how do we fit climate change, inequality into the business system as it exists. The challenge is rethinking the role of business in society and the role of managers in leading those businesses. The questions right now go to a much more fundamental level of what is the role of business in society? How does business serve society? What is the next variant of capitalism that will replace shareholder capitalism that we've had since the 1970s? These are the deeper questions we need to be asking in business schools, because the answers to those questions will guide us into the kind of capitalism that will serve society in the 21st century.